So the question is, I'm not sure my current career path aligns with my values and passions. How can I rediscover a sense of purpose in my work?
Oh, wow. That is a great question to ask ourselves. It's good that we realize these things and that we ask ourselves questions. It shows that we're being thoughtful and we're being careful, which are both, in my view, important attributes for us. So, it's good for us to kind of reflect on where we're at and where things are feeling like there's a bit more friction than there needs to be. And the way I would describe it is sometimes we find ourselves chewing on something that we previously enjoyed and we find that it's lost its taste, a bit like chewing gum maybe. But before we decide that we don't like it, it's useful to try and figure out what's changed. So in this particular case, and I don't know the person that you've been talking to, but it could be that the work is on a slightly different course to the values and passions that was mentioned. And if it's left uncorrected, that gap will grow. If you can imagine that, your values, your passions kind of hold on a true line, but the work is going off slightly to one side, over time, that gap's just going to get bigger and bigger, and there'll be that increase in the sense of dissatisfaction. Now, one of the methods that you can use is to actually write things down. I advise clients to sometimes take a clean sheet of paper and list the pros and cons of a situation. So if the career isn't going quite as planned, two sides to the paper, pros and cons. What's good about the work or good about the current situation and what's not good? And then identify what needs to change to align the values. And it'll provide an idea of what the desired destination is, how you're going to correct course to get to where you need to be. But then you kind of need to put it to the test. If you did reach that goal, would it restore the sense of purpose that was mentioned in the question? And if I'm allowed to say this, actually, even identifying clearly what your values are can be quite challenging. And it might actually be that working with somebody, this is where maybe the work of a coach comes in. So I'm not selling myself, but just working with somebody who can act as coach, somebody that's objective, that can help steer through the emotions of the situation and whatever chaos you might be feeling, whatever conflict, to achieve a clearer goal. That person may be really useful to you at a moment in time, but then can actually be alongside you as you go on that journey towards the ultimate goal.
Yeah, no, I love that answer, Nick. Definitely, I think there's times in my career where writing something down and then seeking an external perspective can make such a difference. And if you're feeling a bit of doom and gloom about maybe where your career path's heading, and I think it can really just help you evaluate. And usually it's not as bad as you maybe internalise it might be. Great advice. An interesting question that I had put to me on Friday that I suggest we turn it to ask the coach question is, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. My current job pays well, but the workload is crushing my work-life balance. I'm worried I can't find another position with the same salary. What are some strategies to manage stress and prevent burnout while I explore my options?
Yeah, that's a good question too. We all know that there are going to be times when there's a heavy workload. It's got to be accommodated. Year-end deadlines, when a colleague's off sick, that kind of thing. You all pull together and you tackle it. But if your life outside of work is being adversely affected by work to the extent that your health and relationships suffer, then it is time to do something about it. First thing to do is start taking a break. The world will not collapse, the sky will not fall in if you take regular breaks, 15 minutes, and go and do something different. Don't grab a coffee and sit at your desk. Don't grab a coffee and even, sort of like sit in the office. If you can get to a breakout room, if you can get downstairs, get out into some fresh air, that will help you, and it will help you tremendously. Decide if there's anything that you can reasonably delegate. Sometimes as managers, we can be guilty of keeping difficult things to ourselves. But by keeping them to ourselves and not involving others, we're actually not developing the people that work for us. So we're carrying the stress and they're not getting developed in their careers. Seek help. We often don't like asking for help, but it could be that if the workload is persistently stressful, it's persistently high, that you can talk with your boss, talk with somebody who works in HR and so forth, talk with somebody that you regard as a trusted party to actually figure out whether there is something that you can adjust or change. So not giving anything up, but something that you can actually do something with. To avoid stress and burnout, a couple more things which are going to sound like you've probably heard them many times over. Eat and drink sensibly. We are what we eat, they say, and if we eat poorly, then actually we're harming ourselves both physically and mentally. And physical exercise is really, really important as well. Getting out you don't have to go to the gym and become a bodybuilder, but, walk regularly, do something which gets you fresh air, sunlight, a conversation even with somebody that you're walking with can count so much towards things. And this situation reminds me of, there's a guy called Stephen Covey, he's a very famous author. He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the one that always sticks with me is the last one, which is called Sharpening the Saw. And it's a great instance where the story goes that a man was walking, or a person was walking through a forest and came across somebody cutting a tree down. And he was going back and forth with the saw, and the tree wasn't getting any more cut down with all the effort that was put into it. And so he says to the man cutting the tree down, why don't you stop and sharpen the saw? And he says, I can't, I'm too busy cutting this tree down. Well, work can be a bit like that for us, that if we let the work take over, then the balance of things in life actually, we don't recharge batteries, we don't do well for ourselves, and we actually slow down in what we're able to do. So those breaks and that kind of physical activity and that eating and drinking well thing, those are all things that will contribute to us doing well in the workplace.
And a very common question I get, and I've had it speaking to a young lady this week who was considering moving jobs, and the reason she was thinking about moving was she'd been recently promoted to manager without the training and support she needs, and really it made her doubt her ability. She wasn't confident to lead the team, and she didn't feel she had the support, so she got in touch with me thinking about leaving. So really the question is, if someone finds themselves in that position, would be promoted to manager without the support they need, it's starting to affect their confidence, they feel some imposter syndrome, and they just feel that the path is unsustainable. What's the best options for them?
Great, yeah, good question. A couple of things I would say. First of all is the company has showed faith in your ability and your commitment by promoting you. So whether you were promoted within the company that you work for, or whether you moved to another company and it was a promotion for you, they've shown faith. I doubt that they'll want you to fail. So first things first, consider that. When you start a new role, either at a new company or within your current one, you always take a step backwards in terms of competence. And what I mean by that is that you may have been highly competent in what you were doing, and now you feel somewhat incompetent because you've moved up a level, you've moved into a different role, and so you're unable to fully function expertly. Okay, it's natural. If being promoted was so easy, the notion of the magic weekend would be a reality. And what I mean by the magic weekend is the one where you're told on a Friday afternoon that you've been promoted, and then you start the job on Monday morning and everybody expects that you actually know everything about that new position. Well, the magic weekend, just like I suppose the magic roundabout, is actually just fiction. So I would say that's something natural. You will feel a bit at sea. So the first thing to do is to identify what it is you need. Do you need more knowledge, as in training and access to tools, or is it access to more experience, as in, tapping into what a mentor or a coach might bring you? And it might be a combination of both of these things. Again, I know I've mentioned speaking to somebody that you trust, but this is again, another important step I think that we can take, that, you know, talk to your boss, talk to somebody in L&D, if there is a department, L&D department, talk to somebody that you trust as a mature friend. I'd sometimes be a bit wary about talking with somebody that's just a friend. Sometimes our friends actually just tap into unhappiness and add to it. So do be careful who you choose to talk with. And be prepared to be patient. Learning takes time. Gaining experience takes time. We might fail. Just be careful about what you do. Don't cut corners unnecessarily and take risks. And don't dwell on unnecessary details either. But do move forward, do meet deadlines, and then just keep repeating and repeating and repeating. It gets easier with practice. Changing your job, of course, is an option. But given that you've had a recent promotion, if you go looking to change job, it might be that that doesn't reflect too well on you, that you've kind of accepted a higher position and now you're actually hopping away again already. So do be careful with that one. And then finally, and this is an option that not many people would favour, is you could actually step down again. It might be that there's a sort of a loss of face associated with that, and it'll take courage to do it, to admit that, you know, this new role is not for me. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not where I'm happiest. So it takes courage to do that, but it might actually move you back into a happier place than where you are now, where you can still make a contribution.
Yeah, good answer, Nick. I like it. Management's a funny one, isn't it? Because ultimately, it's not something that a lot of people seek or are necessarily suited to by nature, but in order to climb the corporate ladder, you know, at some point fairly early on in your career or within the midpoint of your career, you're going to have to take on managerial responsibility. So and I agree, probably a lot of organisations don't support people to take that step necessarily, but it is expected of them. So it's an interesting area of probably needed development for a lot of people.
Yeah, but I would re-emphasize that if you've been promoted, the company hasn't put you there to fail. They've put you there because they expect that you can succeed. It may be that it's a hard conversation to be had to say, I can succeed, but I need some help.
I like it, and thanks again for taking the time. Some brilliant insight.